Thank you very much, Ben-san, and very much nice introduction of myself to you. Unfortunately, I cannot speak Japanese here or Chinese, so I will speak English. I use 50 slides, probably in less than 1 hour. So, and as Ben-san explained me, I am a foreigner because I started my career in Ministry of Trade and Industry of Japan. But in my career, I stationed in Washington, D.C. twice, Paris 3 times. In Paris, I was the Director of Science Technology in the OECD, International Organization. And also, in the second time in the OECD, I was elected to the International Energy Agency, IEA. So my career, out of 40 years in the government, 20 years is outside. So I'm definitely the foreigner. And as a foreigner, I'm very open and frank to tell the tough things to anybody. So Mr. Penn asked me the question, what Taiwan should do in the environment policy. So I said, the first thing you should do is to merge Environment Ministry and Economic Ministry. That's the best way to make the green transformation of the country. And the new government, it can do anything they like. And this is a huge opportunity. So I don't know if this happens or not, but I wish the good luck to that new Environment Ministry of the future. Good luck. I can help you at any time if you need one. Let's see. This is the chart of the oil price since 1970 to the current. IEA was created in 1974 at the first oil shock. The price quadrupled because of the Arab countries' embargo of oil. Consumer countries are totally unprepared. And IEA was created to control or to coordinate the petroleum, strategic petroleum reserves and release it to the market. By doing so, the IEA can influence the price level. So it's a very important energy security organization at that time. Now, energy security is much more complex. IEA, by the way, released 5 times of the stock. At the first time, Gulf War, second is Hurricane Katrina, and the third time, Libyan crisis when I was executive director, and most recently, Ukraine. Now, the energy security is much more complex. The Russian gas pipeline collapsed. The nuclear stoppage in Fukushima makes a huge impact to the Japanese economy. So energy crisis or energy security is covered many different energy sources altogether. Otherwise, energy security cannot be achieved. Comprehensive nature is the new issue. So Fatih Birol, my successor's successor, the current executive director, say, current global security is global energy crisis, not oil crisis, global energy crisis. This is the very interesting chart of IEA, because IEA was the energy security place, but it is moving toward the decarbonization or climate change area very substantially, because CO2 emission of 80% of them come from energy sector. So without control of energy sector, management of climate change is impossible. So it should come together. That's the reason why I recommend the merger of Environment Ministry and Energy Ministry. IEA wrote this report in 2021 called Net Zero by 2050. Many countries committed to make net zero by 2050, China 2060, India 2070, but if that happens as committed by the government, this is the trajectory of oil. Oil may have peaked its demand before 2020 and shifting down. Oil also may peak very soon if net zero happens. So my assumption is that this is the IEA shock to the oil producer, gas producer, because IEA was criticized so much, so hard, that this is not true. It will not happen. But IEA is very much more focused to the carbon issues. Now they are really moving very, very critical about the fossil fuels future. I'm afraid President Putin of Russia may have read this document and decided to invade Ukraine. Because if peak demand of oil or gas could happen much earlier than expected, he will lose oil revenue and gas revenue pretty soon. So he has to invade Ukraine before it happens. So release of that document may have pushed Putin to invade Ukraine. Energy security and geopolitics is very intertwined. This chart is very interesting. This is a gas pipeline dependency of Europe to Russia. It used to be about 30% of the market. It comes down a little bit and moved up again. Even after the Crimea accession of Russia, this number increased by commitment of Baltic Sea, Nord Stream 2 construction. This sent a horrible message to Russia. Even accession of Crimea didn't change European attitude, and even they are increasing the volume of gas from Russia to Europe. So I think this misled Putin very much. And he invaded, and Europe decides to reduce pipeline gas. Still they are importing liquefied natural gas. And increase of liquefied natural gas, not only from Russia, but from other countries like Middle East or US increased dramatically. So that caused very high price of gas. Electricity also rose because of that. There are winners or losers of gas or this climate crisis as well as energy crisis. I think Russia is the loser. They are losing the market, biggest market of their gas, Europe. They are losing the technology from West, investment from the West, and their good brains are running away from Russia. Of course, currently, they are doing good job in oil because oil is readjust its flow globally. They are flowing to India and China, and revenue come back. EU may be the winner because even though it has been impacted very dramatically by the cut of pipeline gas, they try to use their own renewable energy source by Repower EU policy, and at the same time, moving away from Russia, increasing sustainability, security, and also away from Russia. This will give Europe a great chance to be a winner. Of course, you know this CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Measures, is putting the tariff on the imports from other countries may help Europe to push the pressure or burden of transformation to other countries. Trade war may happen very soon on this issue. We have to get prepared for this kind of happening. US is definitely a winner. They get the huge revenue from shale gas sale, as well as weapons, of course. And Inflation Reduction Act invites huge investment to the US for CCS, carbon capture and storage, as well as electric vehicle or hydrogen hub. US is definitely the winner of this game. How about China, India? They get the very short-term gain of cheap Russian gas and oil. India is importing Russian crude and exporting refined products to Europe. Very tricky, but very clever. Of course, for the long term, they are trying to use more renewable energy and try to be a renewable superpower. Can they succeed even with US decoupling or EU de-risking policy vis-à-vis China? We'll see. How about Saudi Arabia, or oil-producing country? High oil price helps them, but if the peak demand of oil happens so soon, can they survive? Only way for their survival or success should be using the technology and exporting only hydrogen from oil or gas and leave carbon dioxide underground by CCS. It is called blue hydrogen. Of course, they have plenty of solar power, so using solar and electrolyzer to export green hydrogen is another way. If these countries invest lots of huge revenue of oil now to these investments, they may stay as a winner in the future. Japan, Korea, and maybe Taiwan too, suffer the high prices, but may succeed by investing to the renewable energy sources and hydrogen supply chain and nuclear power. I will talk about how we can use more nuclear power peacefully and sustainably in the future. ASEAN countries may be winner if supply chain of hydrogen or collaborating together by connecting their power grid lines, just like Europe is doing. Another winner of the game is megatech firms. Apple or GAFA, Google, Amazon, or these companies announced net zero of their operation, or including their supply chain companies by 2030, much, much earlier than the government pledge. And this forced the supplier Sony, for example, Apple request forces Sony to produce by renewable energy 100%. It could happen to the auto sector. Automobile sector has a much more big vendor chain, so impact could be much bigger when auto company request only green iron or sustainable devices. But it is happening. So I call it demand-side-driven transformation. As an IEA, former IEA executive, I'm always thinking supply side, but what is happening in this transformation is demand-side driven, and also financial sector push. This is a new element of current transformation. And if we think about how to govern the transformation, this is a new reality, the demand side. This is a case of Apple. Apple requested renewable energy 100% by 2030, and also all of its suppliers around the world, 213 companies agreed, and there are 28 Japanese companies, including Sony, agreed to do that. This is a chart of gas import and oil import reliance or dependency to others. Vertical axis is gas dependency. Horizontal axis is oil import dependency. The blue part is importing both oil and gas. Green part is exporting both oil and gas. Japan, Korea, and Taiwan too are importing 100% of both gas and oil now and also in the future, so we are stuck here. US is moving directly to the green side from blue because they are now big success of shale gas and oil and even starting exporting it. China, India is very interesting. China is importing 60% of oil and 40% of the gas, but in the future, 80% of the oil and 50% of the gas. What China is trying to do, I talked with the general of People's Liberation Army, and he said, we do use renewable energy to reduce dependency of oil and gas from abroad, from US, from Russia, from the Middle East. So they are using renewable energy for national security and dependency on others. This is their national security policy rather than climate change. India is doing same, but India's situation is much worse. That's the reason why India requested to join the IEA. China is against the US and not interested in joining IEA, but observer. Japan has been importing 30% of gas from Southeast Asia, but Southeast Asia needs to use their gas for domestic purposes and importer in the future. The 30% should go to, if Japan, Korea wants to avoid too much dependency on Russia and Middle East, should be from US or from Australia. So this shows interesting chart, but also another option for Japan and Korea, Taiwan is to increase as much as possible renewable energy and nuclear power. This is the energy security context of these countries. US is saying these days, we are energy independent country. It was a political statement before, but it's now the reality. So that's the reason why I'm saying US is a winner. I met Henry Kissinger before I became when I was elected as a new executive director, because IEA was created by him. He is the founding father. I asked him, what is my mission, Mr. Kissinger? He said, Mr. Tanaka, your role is to get China and India into the IEA, because their import will be much bigger than the OECD as a whole. So energy security or oil security, if they are not cooperating with IEA, IEA's release doesn't make any impact to the market. So we need them. But it's not only the reason which Henry Kissinger mentioned to me. He said, if IEA tried to be a relevant international body to influence the decision of climate change, you need to get China in there also, because, as you can easily imagine, they are the biggest emitter of carbon dioxide. Japan tries to be a leader of hydrogen economy. Started with Toyota Mirai, the fuel cell vehicle. But the number is very poor. We are talking too much of the number of refueling stations and number of the Mirai on the street. We are still agonizing. Between our lost decade in the hydrogen economy, China moves up in electric vehicle, Korea moves up in hydrogen fuel cell, and Europe is doing a lot with Russia impact the hydrogen economy, US Inflation Reduction Act. So Japan is surpassed now, overtaken by these countries, and we are the follower now. Can we really change our position? Japan started green transformation project when Prime Minister Suga announced net zero by 2050 in 2020. An industrial policy list covers many things, especially hydrogen. Hydrogen is a core of Japanese GX strategy. It's not only fuel cell vehicle, but in steel making, nuclear power, port, many things. And current GX transformation policy starts carbon pricing. That is the very important element of green transformation plan, but the price of carbon should be high enough. IEA says it may move up to $200 by 2030 and $250 per ton by 2050. Can really this happen in Japan? This is an interesting challenge. When I was in the IEA, I announced golden age of gas is coming. But now, golden age of gas is leaving. Because after 10 years, and current IEA's announcement in the last World Energy Outlook, the gas demand peak will soon, very soon, in the mid-2020s. Of course, still the slope is very slow, so we need lots of gas and oil supply, and investment is still necessary. Renewables is not replacing all of these gas. So as a gas, as a transition fuel, we need investment to them. But how can current environment of financial sector or industrial policy may really make this possible? This is a real challenge. Hydrogen projects are moving up very fast after Russian invasion and US Inflation Reduction Act. Japan has 3 technology of making hydrogen transportable. One is liquefying hydrogen. Another one is using the MCH. Another one is ammonia. So these are the possible routes of green, blue, hydrogen, ammonia from the other countries. Japan started importing liquefied natural gas from Alaska 50 years ago. Very expensive at the beginning, but now its LNG is commoditized. Together with Taiwan's effort, Korea, we succeeded in making LNG as a commodity. Can we do the same thing to the hydrogen or ammonia? If that's the case, golden age of hydrogen is coming. We need collaboration with Asian countries, so Japan is leading Asian zero emission community. If net zero happens, what will be the energy security paradigm? This is the current situation. This is a likely scenario. Oil still continues to be important part of energy trade, but if net zero happens, oil is just 11%. Important trade issues of energy security is critical mineral and hydrogen. This is very different. So we don't need to build a stockpile of oil in the net zero world, but rather stockpile of hydrogen or stockpile of critical mineral may be necessary. China plays a very important role of critical minerals or climate-related technology, like EV. I'm sorry, this list doesn't have a name. It is solar panel. It is one of them is electrolyzer, batteries, EV, etc. So China's policy is clearly monopolizing these major clean technologies and to become the superpower, renewable superpower, and be a winner. This is the cost of hydrogen from the renewables. Japan is very high. And if the steel is made from this hydrogen, Japanese steel costs much, much higher than other countries. Can we continue this competitiveness of steel? I think we cannot. So Japanese steel mills moves away from Japan to the country where the hydrogen is cheap, where the renewable is cheap. So relocation of industry will happen depending on the price of renewables as well as hydrogen. IEA says that relocation will happen for the solar availability as well as CCS availability. TSMC of Taiwan built its big plant in Kyushu of Japan with huge government subsidy because one of the reasons is Kyushu has lots of solar power. Rapidus, another competitor of semiconductor, is building their plant in Hokkaido where the wind is abundant. So existence of renewables decide the digital leaders' plant. So this link of net zero and industrial policy is obvious. This is a new industrial policy. When I was in Washington, D.C. in 1982 to 1985, everything is trade issue. Automobile, semiconductor, steel, even the metal baseball bat was trade issue. Now, Japan is no longer the trade issue, it's only China, luckily. For example, the electricity demand for AI and data center will increase dramatically, even 3 times more in the high scenario in next 3 years, IEA says. And it may concentrate the countries where the cheap renewables exist. For example, Ireland attracts lots of data centers and more than about 30% of electricity is for AI or data center. Microsoft is trying to use nuclear power for its data center. So change of digitalization may push the industry to the place where the renewable is available. Taiwan can attract lots of these leaders of digital economy if you can provide cheap renewables. Europe is trying to do more. The pipeline connection for hydrogen is what Europe is doing. Europe has already connectivity by power is there. So they are sharing renewable source electricity and nuclear-based electricity depending on the demand situation. So trade of electricity helps Europe to make it more energy security as well as sustainability by using more renewables by connected power market. They do that more in the hydrogen by pipeline. This is what IEA called for COP28, they should triple the renewable use by 2030, double efficiency. You may remember that COP28 announcement, and that is what IEA recommended before it. But this COP28's decision certainly fill some part of the gap to net zero, but still it's only a quarter of the necessary. We cannot be complacent. The success of the COP28, we have to do much, much more in the future. Let's move to the nuclear power. Nuclear is getting much more support now because it is not emitting carbon dioxide. And also support energy security facing the Russian challenge. Japan is currently restarted 12 reactors after Fukushima, but much less than what Prime Minister Kishida announced as a target of 17 to the end of last year. It is political, very much politicized. If Prime Minister Kishida survives the next general election or presidency of LDP in coming September, maybe Governor of Niigata agree with him. But if he may not survive, Governor of Niigata may not agree to restart the very important Kashiwazaki Kariwa plant. This is a very political issue. If net zero happens, IEA says nuclear should be double by 2050, especially in China. But COP28 says nuclear should be triple. I hope this is true. This is not scientific fiction. This is a chart by Václav Smil, and he said nuclear, the current paradigm is a successful failure. Why that is the case? Because he said that energy transformation takes longer and longer years. Coal started its share of global energy market 5% at 1840 and replacing charcoal 60 years to 50%. Oil started in 1915 replacing coal and reached 40%, only 40% by 60 years. Gas, only 25%. So, energy transition takes longer and longer time. This is what IEA says, net zero by 2050 for renewables. This slope is much, much faster than any of these transition, and is this possible? That is what Václav Smil is asking. Of course, it's not politically correct that 1.5 degrees Celsius containment is impossible, so everybody say, well, it must happen. But can it really happen? We have to be realistic. This is the chart for, the same chart for nuclear. Nuclear hit 5% about early 1985. It moved up to 7%, but it come down. IEA says it should be double. So this is a slope of double. But this is, when you compare to this to the other transition, this is very poor. So can nuclear be a mainstreamer of the energy transition? I am afraid not. But is there a way that nuclear can be a mainstreamer again? I think so. This is Ambassador Emmanuel of the US. We invited him to the ICEF Innovation Cool Earth Forum, which I'm chair, and discuss about what the condition for the sustainable nuclear power. We say maybe small modular reactor with passive safety. The safety is definitely the issue. Second is radioactive waste disposal. how can we avoid, reduce the toxicity or reduce the volume of the waste? And proliferation resistance, this is the nuclear weapon. After Ukraine, small countries wish to have a weapon to defend against Russian invasion. So proliferation, non-proliferation regime is almost on the verge of collapse. This is the same recommendation by the Canon Institute of Global Studies, which I chair. And I ask only women to be the member of this group. Because I mentioned about diversity issue in the morning. Women has much more stronger sense of security and safety. So if these women say this is the new idea type of nuclear, then Japanese public may accept such nuclear technology. So we discuss with these ladies and come to the same conclusion as mentioned in the ICEF, the risk minimization by SMR, more realistic method of high-level radioactive waste, and contribution of nuclear non-proliferation. This is, US is also saying the idea of SMR and flexible nuclear. These are the examples. This is Idaho National Laboratory's integral fast reactor and its derivatives. This X-energy is high temperature gas reactor, and Dow Chemical is using it as for the heat. This is the Rolls-Royce. This is a Russian idea of floating nuclear barge. So these are the examples of new use of nuclear power. The Microsoft's idea of using nuclear small SMR for their data center is definitely a good idea, because nuclear provides a very stable clean electricity relative to sun as well as wind. So small modular reactor, if they match the three conditions which we mentioned, maybe this may be the future choice. This is a model of Idaho National Laboratory's integral fast reactor. This is a reactor, this is a pyroprocessing. So plutonium is not going out of the plant, so it is considered much, much more proliferation resistant. They tested it, experimented it in 1986, exactly same or harsher experiment to the reactor compared to the Fukushima accident. It's worse than total blackout of the facility. But the temperature of the reactor moved up, but automatically came down as expected. So it was proven as passive safety. Its radioactive waste will be reduced toxicity in 300 years. 300 years is long, but if the current reactor spent fuel is disposed, it takes 300,000 years. So 300 years is long, but it's much shorter than 300,000 years. By making this kind of technology, maybe it's much easier to find the disposal site. Taiwan faced the same question sooner or later. You have to dispose your waste to somewhere. Can you find a place for 300,000 years in the island? If not, why not 300 years? It is much easier. Disposal of this waste is an issue for environment minister, I guess. So you have to think about where to dispose, but how, what kind of technology be applied to it? With this combination, you may find a solution. Don't think current paradigm. You have to think creatively and innovatively for the future of Taiwan. applied this technology to the debris, meltdown debris of Fukushima Daiichi. It takes 20, 50 years, 20, 30 years to reduce the debris, but it's possible. And the cost is about $2 billion US. It's not so bad. Building the pilot processing plant and reactor in Fukushima. Of course, Fukushima people, I mean, may say they don't like to build a nuclear facility in Fukushima anymore. But to solve the debris issue, because debris will not be accepted by any other prefecture in Japan. Nobody wants to take it. They have to stay in Fukushima somehow. 300 years place may be easy to find rather than 300,000 years sake. So I think this is the technology to solve the Fukushima. So nuclear technology can solve the nuclear disaster. That is the kind of narrative I'm using. But geopolitics is, as I said, another issue. The weapon issue is how we can overcome weapon issue. I was invited to the Chancellor Merkel's Germany to discuss about energy policy with industrial leaders of Germany. I asked her the question, Madame Merkel, why Germany is not using nuclear power? It is before the Fukushima accident, by the way. She said, Mr. Tanaka, I am a scientist. I know nuclear very well. I know how to do it. But to do it in Germany, give me votes. That is what she said. She's very good scientist maybe, but she's better, very smart politician. So she succeeded in staying in the office for 16 years, but created a huge catastrophe with Russia and in trouble for energy security. I was invited to the G8 summit in L'Aquila, Italy, and this is the first time that Obama was invited to the summit, and this is his first summit. The person who sat next to me in the lunch, wear the green costume, green beret and beard, I just wonder, who the hell is this guy? He was Gaddafi of Libya. He stood up and talked a lot about the problem of colonialism. Why Africa is so poor? It's because of colonialism. 20, 30 minutes, nobody can stop him. And then Mubarak, Zuma, the African other leaders echoed him, and all the discussion went to the colonialism. Then Obama raised his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I know Africa because my cousin is Kenyan. He said to me that Africa is poor, but the problem is he has to pay the bribe to the government officials to get the job. So this, Obama said, ladies and gentlemen, corruption or bribery has nothing to do with colonialism. This statement is very strong. And total quiet, total silence for a couple of minutes. And then Merkel, Sarkozy, Brown, and all the European leaders said, yes, corruption. So the total discussion moved away from colonialism to corruption. Gaddafi said after, in the same lunch, I gave up nuclear weapon because US and UK asked him. He did also he also tried to do that to North Korea because UK, US asked him to. He called up Kim Jong-il, I think, but North Korea didn't listen. And very interestingly, he started anti-corruption campaign the year after. But eventually, US invaded in Libya, and Gaddafi was killed in the civil war. And this sent a whole totally bad message to Kim Jong-un. Because this decision in the White House was damn not only Obama, but mainly supported by Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden was against. But because of this, the next president made another mistake. He stopped the Iranian agreement for nuclear power, even though Iran did not have weapon. He he talked with Kim Jong-un and shook hands because North Korea has a weapon. So this is definitely dual standard of US and encourage countries to have weapons. And Putin is threatening Ukraine by using the weapon, and there are such discussion that we need nuclear to protect from Russia in many countries. Is China coming to Taiwan or threatening using nuclear power? I don't know. Israel minister is threatening to use nuclear in Gaza. There is a huge risk of nuclear war. It is imminent. I'm so afraid of that. Kim Jong-un is preparing the war. Who knows? And South Korea is definitely wants to have weapon in the public view. 70% of them wants to have a weapon. But if South Korea has a weapon, Japan will have a weapon. And Taiwan may have a weapon. Everybody will have a weapon, and this will definitely increase the risk of war. And we have to avoid this kind of occurrence. Luckily, 3 leaders of Korea, Japan, US met in Camp David last year and announced this is a new world of geopolitics and initiative. So I want them to follow it up by putting the nuclear issues in their agenda. First one is developing this integral fast reactor, which I mentioned, together. Korea is interested in this reactor. Then let's develop 3 countries. This model for safe, proliferation-free, resistant, and easy waste management as a new model of nuclear power for the world. Why not Taiwan join? Another one is I am promoting the idea of developing nuclear propulsion submarine together, 3 countries, Korea, Japan, and US. This is the Northeast Asian AUKUS. Why not developing this kind of thing as a deterrence measure? Of course, we are not developing weapon, but nuclear propulsion submarine is the best way, together with Tomahawks cruise missile, to deter their attack. The third point is we offer to burn the plutonium and highly enriched uranium of North Korea, burning it in Japan, the plutonium, highly enriched uranium in South Korea, and help US to denuclearize North Korea. In these kind of elements, I always urge that we have to, Korea and Japan should join this treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. There are many Asian countries, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, are the signatory already. Even Kazakhstan. Why not Japan, Korea sign up this agreement and declare clearly that we are not interested in building weapons? I was invited to the Indian government's conference, India's conference, and asked Indians to give up weapons and join Japan and Korea for this movement. Because India is now the leader of Global South. If they want to change the history and to do something different from China, give up weapons, maybe together with Pakistan, and ask the United Nations to give Japan and India as a prominent role in the UN Security Council, the permanent seat. Brazil, Japan, India, Germany are asking as a G4. The lack of that kind of prominent role for non-weapon states is the problem of UN. Current permanent seat holders are only monopolized by the weapon countries. This is not fair. That is the reason why non-weapon smaller countries want to have a weapon to defend itself. So Indian audience said, Mr. Tanaka, and I even said at the last, if Mahatma Gandhi is alive now, he will agree with me. Indian audience said, well, Mr. Tanaka, it's a good try, but it is very difficult. But as a diplomacy, if we talk about the future of the nuclear, this kind of discussion is inevitable. We have to think about what is the nuclear means for the human being, and how we can reduce the risk of the war is also necessary. Well, this is a famous quote from Nagai Takashi, of Japanese person who was hit by the Nagasaki nuclear weapon. He said, how to make the devil to the fortune, that is to use the nuclear power as a peaceful tool for the future civilization. This is a very philosophical talk, but I think I cannot agree more to him. Now, the United States is promoting nuclear fusion, the small nuclear commercial fusion. There are many ventures putting the money into it. And if one of them succeeds, it's a revolution. Nuclear power, current fission power will no longer survive. Fusion may be the future. Well, fusion attracts lots of young talents, but yet we don't know which one will succeed. There's a chance. Yuval Noah Harari, you know the name, he's the author of Sapiens, said there are 3 challenges for the 21st century human being: the nuclear war, ecological challenge, and tech destruction by AI algorithm. And he said these are all of global issues, but current politics are moving toward nationalism and populism. And nationalism and populism cannot solve these problems. So he urged the politician to come with global identity, which I mentioned this morning. So how can we make the global leaders with global identity? Let them think about it. Let them understand it. That's the first step. It is difficult to find a way, but it is a way. First step is to train them in that direction. And I really feel very good of creating this incubation hub for young generation. This is a really interesting opportunity to have that kind of leaders in the future. This is ICEF lineup of people. The Abe-san, Prime Minister, established this organization, and he is one of the unique Japanese politicians with some kind of global identity. We miss him. I met, you know that movie of Oppenheimer. I think it is in the show. Japan started just last month, the road show in Japan, delaying about a year because there is a discussion how this treat fairly about Hiroshima or not. This was a big political issue. I met his grandson in Singapore, and he urged that the scientists must contribute the peace. Oppenheimer tried his best but didn't really make success, but the scientists really must do their best to stop the war. That is his message. The final scenario is, this is my New Year card of this year. my daughter designed it. The birds created together the dragon, the symbol of prosperity and power. Well, the birds can work together to make dragon. Why not human being to make peace? That is my message, and thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Takata-san. Maybe we have questions. It's not on time. OK， 我们开放要不要一个问题，好不好？来 ，Hello, please.
I'm John Johnson from the Energy Administration. You are always very visionary on the energy issue. You just mentioned in the page 13 of your slide, you announced the golden age of gas when you were the chair of the IEA. And actually, the next year, IEA published the golden rules for the golden age of gas. Right now, you also instruct us. We are going to the golden age of hydrogen. So I'm very curious. What should be the golden rules for the golden age of hydrogen? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very, very good question. To make the hydrogen as a success or a golden age, I think many things must be done. As I said, each country should have a, let's say, policy, not only research and development, but the deployment of the gas. Japan is enacting the law to fill the price gap of hydrogen to the LNG. Deployment measure is definitely necessary. So that is happening, but domestically. But also CCS in the US is a real contribution for the possible hydrogen. But to make the reality, we need big long-term contracts by off-takers. Otherwise, no supplier may come. Just the LNG case is same. Because Japan committed to import LNG and helping these companies to use LNG domestically, there is a regulatory market, so all the cost is moved to the price of the electricity as well as gas. So that kind of regulatory framework is definitely necessary to fill the price. Another thing probably is most necessary for the global collaboration is the standard setting and regulation of the hydrogen trade or ammonia trade. Because there is no clear definition of what is the low carbon hydrogen. There's a discussion about green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, pink hydrogen, gray hydrogen, turquoise hydrogen, etc., etc. So what is the clean hydrogen means in terms of the carbon intensity, how it should be transported, and this kind of regulation and harmonization of standards is definitely necessary to make the golden age of hydrogen. So, well, there are many things to do, but at least these must happen at the beginning. And I think Taiwan is a very good player in the liquefied natural gas. Why not the major player in the hydrogen trade?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Takata-san. 我们热烈掌声鼓励 ，Big applause. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a seat.